Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled People Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today: Sister-in-law demands I pay rent in my own house. After that, you didn't get it in writing. No, you. And after that, my selfish sister is having our parents pay for her college. Now they can't pay for my kids' daycare anymore. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen has to pay rent. I can't stand landlords. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Sister-in-law demands I pay rent in my own house. Context: I, 18 male, am the younger brother to Will, who's 30. My mother passed of a heart issue when I was 5, and my father wasn't the best person. When I was 9, my brother went through a lot of court and custody trials to get a hold of me, and won in the end, partially due to the fact I was open about not wanting to live with my dad. When Will was 24, he got married to my current sister-in-law, Kara, who's 31. Kara doesn't really like me, not in an aggressive way, but she's always treated me more like I was a guest or a visitor who had overstayed their welcome, even trying to move me to the couch after they had their newborn son because why should we get a new house when this one already has 2 rooms? Will was very adamant about the fact that we moved to have more room, so we did. He's always treated me similarly to how he treats his son, with a bit more jokes and non-serious insults in the mix. He's the only family I really have, and he's good family too. My nephew, of course, is considered family as well, and I do love him, but not in quite the same way I care about Will. When I turned 16, I got a job because I didn't want to be leeching off of the 2 of them. I work as a merchandise assistant, nothing amazing, but it makes money. Kara has always had something to say about what I buy, about how I should have been saving or that what I was buying was unimportant stuff. I do have a savings account, and I put some of every paycheck in there. Now that I've turned 18, Kara is trying to make me pay rent, and it's causing constant arguments between her and Will. Yesterday I got sick of it and told her that I live here. I've lived here longer than you have, so why should I pay rent? Not to add on to the fact that what I do with my money isn't your business. It did stop the argument in all fairness, but Will also told me later I should have kept out of it, and now Kara keeps sending me dirty looks and sly comments every time she sees me, to the point I've started going out to eat or I eat in a different room so that the tension doesn't boil over. I don't know, maybe I am the jerk and should have just compromised with her to keep the peace, but it doesn't feel fair, so am I the jerk? Edit: I only finished high school about a month ago, considering different universities right now. I turned 18 in February. He wanted you to stay out of it because he's still trying to protect you. You have a wonderful big brother, and I'm sorry for the trails you've been through. Not the jerk. Your sister-in-law needs to learn to treat you with respect. You give them privacy, don't be in their business, and you're respectful. I'm sure you do chores as well. OP, you're doing a great job as a younger brother. You did nothing wrong. Maybe talk to her and see what she dislikes about you. She dislikes that he ruined her perfect family dream and that every dollar hubby spends on him is $1 less for her and his real son. She sees him as an unwelcome intruder on her life, but instead of breaking it off with a boyfriend doing something she didn't like, she stuck around hoping she could make him see how unwelcome he is so he would leave. Will's a great brother for stepping up and being a dad at 21, but foolishly naive for marrying someone he needs to protect his brother from. Not the jerk. You are part of Will's family, and she has neither the right nor the power to change that. You didn't get it in writing. No, you. So I was a new but qualified recruit in a small team that was working with a very large client and stakeholder in the company. Despite my skills, it was my first real job fresh out of grad school, so I was inexperienced with office politics, contract law, power hierarchies, etc. The clients had given us an almost impossible task to prototype a complex solution to a technical problem that they had. As the only one in the team with the relative expertise, the burden quickly fell on me to deliver alone while the others essentially managed. The team leader and effective boss promised me at the beginning that I would get a bonus worth roughly 30% of the salary on which I was hired. Apparently, this bonus was a direct financial contribution from the big clients themselves, and the wheels were in motion to get this extra cash. Great, but not really, because it was not in writing. Over the next 2 years, however, no such bonus compensation transpired. I would periodically and half-heartedly ask about this bonus during in-person meetings, and I was verbally reassured it was on its way. In hindsight, I would have been more assertive and perhaps sent an email, but again, I was a newbie and unwilling to bite the hand that feeds, so to speak. After these 2 years, the company began to expand their business with the client as a direct result of the work that I did on the impossible project. At some point, the clients even present all that hard work of mine at some international conference, of course, claiming it was their intellectual property and proprietary solution. Although the project ownership rightfully and lawfully belonged to them, the lack of acknowledgement left a bitter taste in my mouth, and worse was that money flowing around and both companies were profiting from 2 years of painstaking effort, but there was no bonus in sight. So my work contract was also nearing its end in the 3rd year. Obviously, the company wanted to retain me to continue on this project. I was the only one who knew the ins and outs of it. It would be a joint employment between the company and client, as I would be tasked with transitioning the project from the company to the client, which would require several more years to do so. I also went through half a year of specialist training with the clients. Only I could do the job for the foreseeable future. For this, I was offered a decent increase in my salary, but that missing bonus was ruining my trust. At a contract negotiation meeting, I asked about it one last time. The team leader and boss said that they had no recollection of such an agreement or an offer, and that I should have gotten it in writing. Fair enough, some lessons are learned the hard way. But the worst realization was that the missing bonus, a measly 30% of the new hire salary for almost 3 years, was now earmarked for an intern to join me on the project. It was almost a 1-to-1 calculation, as the client would sponsor the intern with the funds that were intended bonus for me. It was the last week of the work contract, and Human Resources had invited me to double-check the document before I was to sign it. Of course, given all the time, money, training, and resources invested in me continuing on this project, and my very real eagerness to do it, it was assumed that I would be here for the long haul, and the work contract was a formality. So what happened next is something that I do not recommend that anyone try at home, or work for that matter. It was a moment of impulse from a reckless youth. However, I was feeling particularly vengeful about the missing bonus. My ego had been bruised because I wrongfully trusted them to follow through, but I was not clever enough to get the agreement in writing. Well, Uno reverse card moment. There was also no written agreement on my end. So I had not yet signed contract. I carefully double-checked my emails, and there was nothing in writing where I agreed to continue on this project, or even this job. In fact, I had just been verbally enthusiastic about the project during meetings with my boss and the clients. The first new workday rolls around when I am officially no longer employed at the company or with the clients. I gave no notice and no warnings. I just abandoned them. On the previous day, I had left my company pager and phone in the office locker. I had to sacrifice a few personal possessions on the office desk. I logged out of the work email messenger system so that they could not reach me. I'm not sure how they responded because I ignored and deflected every single communication which came my way for following months. It was bliss knowing that I probably caused this company a major catastrophe for the next few years at least. Of course, I could not predict the consequences that they would face from abrupt and unannounced exit, but I did not have time to care about them. I had to become selfish, and I had to dip into my savings and relocate and start afresh in another city far away, which was very difficult without references considering the professional bridge that I had just burned, hence the not recommending part. But eventually my skills began to speak for themselves. The last I heard about the company was from an ex-colleague as we reconnected on an online professional network a few years ago. Apparently, the company still exists, but it is a shell of its former self as things went horribly south after I left. They lost the big client as I had anticipated. No one else had the skill set to do work. The clients are still players in the sector, but I have the great fortune of not having to interact with them so far. But I could not have predicted the domino effect that followed in the company. A few more large clients followed soon after because staff had to be reshuffled to do my project, and these other clients felt neglected. Now they are downsizing and in the process of being swallowed by a competitor. From what I gather, the other big casualty of this revenge is my ex-boss developed some substance problem around this time to cope with the stress, triggered in part by not being able to contact me for months on end during a critical time in the company's expansion. Throw in a divorce too, because this work stress destroyed the marriage as well. I did feel a little bit guilty when my ex-colleague explained all this, and still do. Is it enough for me to right my wrongs and write an apology or something? Not really, but perhaps I'm wrong here. I am open to suggestions. Note, the ex-boss tried to get in touch with me a few more times some years after things went downhill, but I was just too busy, so I continued my ghosting strategy. But anyway, here's to my ex-company. I hope it was worth the measly bonus that I deserved. I was brought on as a new recruit, and I was a junior who had to lead the project from the get-go. I had to work hard and learn new skills in the hours outside of work so the fat clients and middle management could reap the rewards, not on my vengeful watch. The reason that I'm writing this is that it is somewhat cathartic. The company did some crappy things, and so did I. But the missing bonus still gets to me from time to time. I could have bought a house, and I could have settled down in that old town. I wouldn't have been displaced for months and living with my head just above the water, having to rebuild myself for a few good years following that. Abandoning the project and the job was career-ending at the time, but my revenge was such that whatever happened, I would try to get through life without groveling back to that company. Of course, this arrogant jerkness of mine, born from this hatred of having not gotten that bonus, still has at least one unwritten chapter. At the current workplace, where I am also a stakeholder now, I'm now proposing a new version of that old project I began a decade ago and never got a chance to see to completion. It would be nice to showcase a patent during an international conference attended by those big former clients. That would be the real bonus. So yeah, mistakes all around, with at best mixed ending for all parties. But at least it is finally good to get this in writing. My selfish sister is having our parents pay for her college. Now they can't pay for my kids' daycare anymore. I'm 25, female. I live with my husband and our 2 sons, who are 3 and 6 months old. We've been struggling financially and both work in the service industry where it's very difficult to get time off, so my parents pay for my son's daycare so we can work. My sister, Jess, who's 17, got into a prestigious Ivy League this year. She received financial aid, so won't have to pay the whole insane amount of money, but housing and reduced tuition comes out to about $10,000 a year. She also got into our local state school where she got a full ride and wouldn't have to pay anything. She decided on the IV when our parents agreed to pay. My parents recently sat me down and told me that they would no longer be able to pay for my kids' daycare because they're paying for Jess's college. Their excuse is that they paid similar amounts to my college. I am extremely frustrated because I went to the cheapest college available for me, and I think Jess should have done the same. We're all proud of her, but I feel like she's putting her ego over my nephews. We simply cannot afford daycare, and I will likely have to quit my job, which may mean we could be evicted. I told all of this to Jess on the phone and politely asked her to contact the state school to ask if they would still take her, and to take a gap year if not. She refused, and I got angry and called her selfish and immature. My husband agrees with me, but our parents are mad and won't answer my calls. Am I the jerk? Update. Okay, I haven't used Reddit much before and wasn't expecting this influx. I called my sister and I apologized and explained that I was angry at this situation, not her. Our financial situation is very bad right now, and I took my fear out on her, which wasn't okay. She said she would speak to our parents for me and consider taking out loans so we could continue getting help. May delete this later. Info. Is it true that they paid $10,000 for your college as well? Because if so, it's not fair to your sister to deny her the money for her dream school. Just because you chose the cheapest school doesn't mean she should have to. Edit. OP isn't replying, but based on other comments, it's gonna be a you're the jerk from me. The parents feel the sister is entitled to the same $10,000 OP was. It's their money, and they can spend it as they please. Wow, you're the jerk. You're an adult with a husband. Start paying your own bills. You're the jerk. It's more selfish and immature to expect your parents to pay for your kids. Your parents are paying for their daughter. They don't need to put her future on the back burner because you and your husband can't be responsible adults. You're the jerk. She doesn't have to choose her college based on your financial issues. You've been lucky your parents have funded your childcare this long. That's not their job, it's yours. She's not being selfish or immature. You, however, have a distinctive smell of entitled. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her younger sister? Please let us know. Bruh. As you wish. In a former life in the previous century, I was a tour bus driver. It was a great job for a single person. Took me all over the US and into Canada several times. The tour companies often hire step-on guides to show a busload of strangers around a city or a national park or such like. The step-on is usually a local resident and knowledgeable about the area's history and attractions. Most are at least competent, and some are remarkably good at their job. One day in a northern city, I forget just where, we picked up a woman who didn't have much experience with bus tours. She had an odd personality and was a bit of a cold fish, but whatever. I didn't have to like her. I just had to work with her for an hour and a half. It soon became obvious she didn't know what she was doing. I had never been to that city before, had no idea what was on her agenda, even if I had known my way around, and she provided very little information to me. Obviously, doing an efficient job of directing the driver is a key part of the job, but she told me she would let me know where to turn. As one might imagine, having a clue or two about where you are headed is very important for the safe operation of a bus. You don't just turn at a moment's notice, especially if you are on a multi-lane road. I had to interrupt her a few times to get directions, and she was getting testy about it. I had been doing the job for a while by then, and I was quite good at it. I got along great with most step-ons, and we worked seamlessly together. The really good ones will incorporate some of their directions to the driver into their narrative. Okay, when we get to the top of the hill up ahead, Gadwell is going to turn left on 19th Street. As we round the corner, if you look to your left, nice. Anyway, this guide got really upset at me the next time I asked her something, like which lane I needed to be in. She keyed the PA mic and said, "I'm sorry for the interruption, but your driver keeps asking me for directions. I keep telling him I'll let him know where he needs to take us." And on to more blather. Okay, I thought, we'll do it your way. Soon enough, the guide gets into telling some story and we continue to motor on, obviously heading out of town on a major street that became a state highway or something. After a while, she noticed where we were and got really flustered. She didn't know a good way to get turned around, and I offered no suggestions, just kept driving while she sorted it out. After that, she started doing her job, and we didn't have any more trouble. After we had dropped her off, the passengers and the regular tour guide told me how funny they thought this episode was, and we all had a good laugh. You want to escalate to Tier 3 support? Okay, there's a process for that. Let's do it. I worked in customer support for a tech firm, and if I may say so, the company is good at it and I am good at it. We have customer satisfaction stories and data to prove it. Our customer support is what gives us a competitive advantage in our marketplace and makes us very profitable. One day I get a phone call from a customer. I say, "Hello, and his response is, "I want to talk to third-tier support." Okay, we have a process for that. What seems to be the problem? No, you don't understand. I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to third-tier support. Actually, I do understand. You want to talk to third-tier support. I'm setting that up. But there are a few questions I have to ask you, and if I don't know the answers to those questions, then they aren't going to call you. They are going to ask me to call you back and get those answers. So what seems to be the problem? He explains to me the problem. Have you tried this? No, you don't understand. I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to third-tier support. You know, the guys who aren't working from a script. I assure you, sir, I'm not working from a script. Have you tried this? Yes, I did. Now may I talk to third-tier support? Have you tried that? Yes, I did. Now may I talk to third-tier support? My problem isn't on your script. There is no script for this problem. I'm asking you this question because I thoroughly understand our device, and I know from previous experience that that might solve your problem. Have you tried this other thing? What makes you think that this other thing is going to solve the problem? Well, I've been doing this work for a couple of years now, and I have a pretty good idea of how these things work. So I thought this other thing might solve the problem. Look, I have a master's degree in computer science. I want to talk to somebody in third-tier support. Now, I don't want to disrespect computer scientists because computer science is a hard field to get into. But everybody should understand that there's a big difference between being a computer scientist, computer programmers, system administrators, database administrators, network administrators, etc. Those are important topics. Computer programmers, by way of contrast, write computer programs. They need to know about computer science topics. But computer science is a means, not an end. The same is true for all of the other specialties that I mentioned. He may be a really good computer scientist, but that doesn't mean he's a network administrator or a system administrator. Those are different specialties. Someone who says, "I have a master's degree in computer science, I don't need to talk to you," knows a great deal about what he knows, but doesn't know what he doesn't know. I've been around long enough to know that there is a great deal I don't know. Just try this one other thing, and if that doesn't work, then I will give you to third-tier support. Promise? Promise. I can hear him typing in the background, losing it. I can hear when he hits the return key because he hits it hard. Then he picks the phone up and says, "It's working now." Great. You still want me to escalate to third-tier support? Then I get a torrential outpouring of him losing it. Since this is a family channel, I won't give the details, but rather leave it up to your imagination, gentle reader. Then he hung up on me. Wouldn't you know it, he got a customer satisfaction survey, and I got straight zeros. I got called into my boss's office, and we had a conversation about this call. He was upset, and I can't say I blame him, because he also gets graded on our survey scores. He called in some third-tier support people to listen to the recording for training and quality assurance purposes, and they said I did everything right. He, me, did not deserve that rating. They also said that there was no way I deserved that mistreatment and that the survey should be tossed out. Unfortunately, the rules are the rules, and that score counted. So I lost my quarterly bonus, a couple of $1,000s. However, the big boss felt awful about the whole affair, so he and his wife took my wife and I out to dinner at the most expensive restaurant in town. We had a lovely time. At the end of the evening, I noticed that he paid for the meal with his personal, not his corporate credit card. I asked him about that. His response was golden. "I'm in a position where I could probably get away with it, but that wouldn't be right. What happened to you wasn't right either. This dinner is my way of making it up to you as best I can, and I figured if I'm going to do that, I might as well take my wife and your wife along. Why not?" He knew I was married because I have the ring. I love that guy. Worked with him for years. I would have liked a couple of $1,000s, but the acknowledgement that I had been done over was a great second place. Don't send you any small contracts? Got it. This was several years ago when I was working as an installs coordinator for a department store. If you wanted work done, anything from installing a toilet to building a garage, you'd come to me. I'd give you a quick estimate, and if you were on board after that, send a contractor out to your site to do exact measurements, if needed. Then I would work out your exact material and labor costs from there, quote you out, and keep in loop with the contractor, mostly so I could help work out anything that might delay the work. Contractors are paid a set rate, usually per unit, foot, or square foot. They also get a flat $50 fee for the initial site visit, whether or not the customer goes through with the project. I occasionally got calls from frustrated tradesmen who felt these $50 visits were a waste of their time. But since those visits typically took under an hour, including travel, and I was making $3 over minimum wage, I couldn't drum up a whole lot of sympathy for these complaints. Most of our contractors came in two categories: bigger companies that generally had a liaison who wanted to keep their business partners happy, and individual tradesmen or father and son businesses where the person I spoke to on the phone would be the one doing the work. I was fortunate enough to be trained by my predecessor who remained at the store, but had stepped down to take a less stressful position so I could go to him for advice, and more importantly, he helped me quickly build a rapport with the people I worked with. This would become important because I had wide discretion in how I divided up the jobs, but many of our partners were fairly specialized or simply preferred certain kinds of work, a fact that our systems weren't set up to accommodate. Officially, I was meant to rotate through lists. I used this plumber last time, so use that one this time, etc. There was no metric in place to track that I was doing that, however, nor any interest in enforcing it. As a result, I could send more work to people I knew were in a bad financial spot, skip somebody who I knew was planning a vacation or had a sick worker, etc. Maybe a couple months into the job, I get a phone call from a bigger construction company on my list, turning down a site measure I had sent him to fence a yard. I pulled his file up on screen for the call and realized that he had kicked back the last 3 jobs I'd sent to him. He demanded I stop sending him these chicken little jobs. I'm not interested in anything under $100 grand. His file listed him for fences, decks, garages, etc., but there was nothing in his contract about a minimum job size, and I'd have been surprised if there was. So I just told him sure and ended the phone call, then put a note on his file not to use the company. The price of lumber doubled that summer, and the combination of 4 refused site measures in a row, along with not doing any work for us in over a certain number of months, automatically ended his preferred contractor status with us, meaning he was paying more for materials. He paid close enough attention to his business to stop work he didn't like from coming in, but never noticed that his material costs went through the roof overnight. I know the company had a rough couple of years after that. As far as I know, they're still in business, but I hope that dude has mellowed out a little in how he talks to the people who help put work across his desk. We were never a big slice of his income, but I like to hope my small, malicious compliance helped put just a little more of a squeeze on him. Am I the jerk for telling our mutual friends the real reason I adopted a cat? I, 28 male, recently agreed to foster a cat who I was told had massive behavior issues and was going to be taken to an animal shelter if I didn't agree. I expected spitting and hissing and biting, not litter box trained, etc. Cat arrived with nothing to her name. Cat is 5 years old. No box, bowls, toys, food, nothing but a flea collar that was clearly months old and too tight. Cat was absolutely filthy. Ex-owner told me that they couldn't provide money at the time for me to set the cat up, and I allowed it as I had been told that they were in a nasty financial position. We agreed to keep a tab of vet bills and food bills to be paid. As they're leaving, she mentions the case of expensive energy drinks she stopped to pick up on the way. I was gobsmacked. I set about getting what the cat needed and began to try to gauge its behavior. Turns out this animal is the sweetest, smartest, kindest being I've ever had the pleasure to know. Took Cat to the vet, and Cat is extremely ill and underweight. Got her medical shampoo for her skin, antibiotics for the infection that she has, and then called her ex-owner and told her to send me her microchip details as I would be keeping the cat. She says that's fine. Cat was never chipped anyway. Doesn't pay anything bar $40 of the bills. 2 days later, turns up at her job with hair and nails done. I sat on it for 6 weeks and stewed until I found out she had been speaking to someone about a kitten. I didn't embellish anything. I simply told 2 of my closest friends what happened and why the cat stayed with me. The truth spread like wildfire, and most people have now turned their back on her. My only intent was to stop her from getting another animal, not for it to end up like this. I feel like I could be the jerk because this has affected her work and friendships. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. This sounds like a person who should not be trusted with anything other than perhaps a cactus. Not your fault that people spread gossip. Am I the jerk for ruining a happy family moment by correcting a lie? So here's the deal. I'm 16, male. Got step-siblings, 18, 17, and 15. My dad married their mom when I was 8. About a month before they got married, which is when they became engaged, they sat the 4 of us down and asked for us to give our blessing on the marriage. My step-siblings all did and were eager for it to happen. I was not. All 4 of us had lost our other parent before that point. Their dad passed about 3 to 4 years before that point, and my mom had passed 2 years before. At this time, Dad asked me why, and I said it was all too fast for me, and I wasn't ready for a new family to come in and take over what used to be us and Mom. They told me my reason wasn't good enough, and they were ready, and I would thank them one day. They have forever talked about how special our family is because we chose to be a family. We got to pick our family, etc. I've told my dad and his wife both how much it bothers me when they say it like that because I hadn't chosen this. They told me I would come to understand with time. It's been 8 years. I don't feel different than I did 8 years ago. I didn't choose them, and honestly, I likely wouldn't choose them if I had a choice. They all like to ignore the fact I said what I did and instead say all 4 of us kids agreed and were excited for the wedding. Even my step-siblings will say I chose them and they chose me. Only half of that is true. My dad and his wife celebrated 8 years married with some family. Everyone else was having a good time, but I was annoyed hearing all about how we were family by choice and how we chose each other. So I spoke up. I said everyone else chose, but that I had said no when asked, and I was told my reasons weren't good enough, so they'd choose for me. I said I understand I didn't get to dictate my dad's life, and that's fine, but the least they could do is not lie and say I chose this marriage and family. The mood soured. My grandparents could not believe Dad had dismissed me way back then and then talked about how happy I was about it. My dad, his wife, and my step-siblings said I spoiled a happy family moment with my outburst, and that makes me childish and mean. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. For an emotionally difficult problem, you have a pretty accurate view of it. I think if they'd shut up about the choice thing, you'd have let them have their happy marriage. But going on and on about it suggests they're overcompensating, and it's not fair to drag you into it and lie about your feelings. That's hurtful and selfish. They're constructing a narrative that makes them look better without regard for how it makes you feel. Telling the truth was the right thing to do. It made them uncomfortable, but they deserved it. Maybe now they'll think twice about dragging you into the happy chosen family story. Am I the jerk for refusing to take my husband's last name? Me, female 26, and my fiance, Jake, male 27, have been together for 5 years. We met in college while he was doing an exchange in my country, Belgium. He's from the US. He loved it here, so he decided to stay, and we are really happy here. I've met his family a few times when we went there to visit them. They've never been to Belgium. Important for later. Now here, women don't take their husband's last name. It is the law. All documents will still be in my maiden name after our wedding. I think it is possible to do all kinds of administrative stuff to change my name, but I don't want to. All the women around me have their maiden name, and my fiance agrees that I should keep my name. On to the main issue. 3 days ago, we were doing a Zoom call with his family, and the topic of the name came up, and they were very surprised to hear that I was not taking his name. I explained very calmly that it is the law here, and that I had the perfect example of my mom, who had a business in her maiden name and only used my father's name when dealing with our school, or things like that, and that I wanted to take the same approach as her. Well, all heck broke loose. His mom started screaming at me, saying that it's not because I came from a country of peasants that I should punish my fiancé, that he was so far away from them because of me, and so on. Jake defended me, and I tried to calm her down, but she turned to her husband while crying that they never came to my country because they know it's not nearly as good as the US, and that I just proved it. And father-in-law said that I was being petty, and that he didn't want to listen to such nonsense. They left the call, and my fiancé comforted me because I was honestly very shocked by their reaction and their insults. I thought it was over, but they've been sending messages over the past few days. They even got the rest of the family to do it as well. And even my parents said that I should try to keep the peace and offer to check into the administrative procedures to change my name. But I really don't want to. My fiancé is conflicted. He grew up in a town where it was very, very uncommon for a woman not to take her husband's name, and he agrees that it would keep the peace with his family. But he does not want to force me and says that it's my decision. Am I the jerk here?
Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.